Today we're talking about the 4 roles inside your call center. So your call center, as you scale your plumbing, HVAC, and electrical business forward, your call center becomes an increasingly important and complicated part of what you're doing. It becomes the first impression or the second impression that customers have with your team, so it really helps set the precedent. And what ends up happening is your call center is who sets up your technicians for success. So if we think about how a customer engages with your business, we all really focus on the customer experience, or we think we do, when we talk about doing things like, hey, are you wearing your booties? Are you wearing your shoe covers? Are you putting down drop cloths? Where do you park when you pull up to the home? And all these things are important, but by the time the technician gets out to the home, that customer has already dealt with most of the facets of your company. They've already engaged in your marketing, so they have expectations that you've laid out to them, that your pricing is clear, that you're family owned, that you're whatever it is that you put in your marketing. So they have assumptions in how interacting with you is going to go. Then they have their first interaction, which is going to be from your call center or your contact center. It could be inbound, it could be outbound, it could be you door knocking, it could be any of those things. But that is where most of the dissatisfaction that a customer is going to have happens. Now, granted, a technician could go out to a home and do something dumb, maybe cause some damage, leave a mess. But those are sort of the easy things to avoid. Most of our complaints over the years, as we've grown and as we've scaled, have come from how we've handled customer interactions over the phone. We put a big emphasis on call center because call center is who sets everyone else up for success. It's the second step in the flywheel of our business. So let's dive in. There are 4 roles inside the call center. As this expands, you start adding team leads, but we're really just going to talk about the individual contributor roles here today. The first role is the customer service rep. The CSR is what we call them. And CSRs, although they do some outbound calling, the majority of their job is handling the inbound requests from customers for service. It's what most people have. The phone rings and your CSR picks it up. Now, what happens after that is scripting and call grading and a lot of other complicated stuff. But the gist of it is they pick up inbound phone calls. Now, some stuff to look out for as you start growing your inbound team is a few things. One, small businesses, especially in plumbing, HVAC, and electric, they tend to hire a CSR or 2 CSRs, and they end up assigning them a variety of very odd tasks. So raise your hand to yourself if this is you. But hey, my CSR is more like an office manager. They do open the mail. They do billing. They call customers to collect money. They cut checks to vendors. They help schedule. They do a variety of different things. Maybe they post on your social media. That's like 5 or 6 people's different jobs. Now, an inbound, a CSR, is usually one of the first hires the company makes. So they end up sort of grabbing all these other things, but it prevents them from doing the rest of their job, which is the second thing that you want to look out for, which is productivity. So productivity is a big one. In addition to the time wasters that I just mentioned, as you start to get your inbound, your CSRs aligned with their real role, what ends up happening is you might undershoot productivity. And our general rule is if they're not coming in, then you're going out. So if we want to hit 80 to 100 calls a day per CSR, that's our metric for success. And if we aren't getting 80 to 100 on inbounds, then we expect you to flip over to outbounds and begin calling customers. Now, calling customers could be letting them know about promotions. It could be scheduling maintenance visits for our club members. It could be either one of those 2 things. But the important thing is you have a minimum goal. What's happened in the past with us is we have a team of CSRs and we were only getting 20 calls a day per CSR. And suddenly we find out that really people are just on the phones for 45 minutes a day out of an 8-hour day. And it's because we weren't setting them up for success and giving them a way to outbound. That's usually the first position, and it's an important one. The next one's dispatch. And I'm going to be putting these in order of roughly when you add them to your business. So dispatch is the next one, and if your CSRs fill the bucket, then dispatch empties that bucket. So the dispatchers are the orchestrators of the day. And you have to give them some rules. Dispatchers are roughly held to the same metric that your service manager would be held to: revenue and gross margin. So a dispatcher, an effective dispatcher, knows your technician's performance. They know their skills, they know what they're good at, they know their closing rates and their average tickets, and they're going to line each and every technician up for success. So if you have someone who's amazing at, servicing boilers, or if you have someone who's a really good water heater salesperson, then an effective dispatcher would make sure that anytime those two opportunities came in, the right tech always went to the right job. Now, dispatching is a spectrum, and the thing that you need to be thinking about here is, where are you on that spectrum? So let's say it's a 1 to 5. So a 1 is we are very route-based. So, maybe that's a delivery company or landscaping or something that is we're going to go to this neighborhood and we're going to do a route. And 5 is we are opportunity-based, we're sales-based. So that's usually called dispatching for profits. There's no right or wrong here. You just need to figure out where you are and which one aligns to your business model. So if a 1 is route-based and a 5 is dispatching for profits, where you will send someone 2 hours out of their way because they're the right person to close on that job, we're probably a 4. So we always want to put the right person in the right job, but if they're 2 hours away, we're probably not going to do that. You have to pick for yourself where you fall on that spectrum, and then you have to give those rules to your dispatcher. So like I said, your dispatcher needs to know the rules because they're held to the same standard that service managers are: revenue and gross margin. And how you dispatch on that spectrum of 1 to 5 is going to determine how they think about routing and putting the right tech on the right job. The next person to hire is an inside sales rep. An inside sales rep, what they do is they follow up on all of the estimates that your team members or your salespeople give every single day and attempt to close. A general rule of thumb is that you want to contact every prospect 7 to 9 times to see if that job will close. It doesn't have to be pushy. It shouldn't be pushy. And it can be as simple as, hey, we were out yesterday. I hope you had a great experience. I saw that you and Jim Bob talked about this option. Did you have any questions on it? Did you need me to send over financing? And then as it goes on, as you get closer to that 7 to 9 touch point, then you start talking about things like discounts and how can we get this closed for you? What's a number that makes sense for you? But inside sales runs that process. So for us, we estimate about $300,000 a day that doesn't get closed while in the home. So our inside salespeople follow up on that all day long. And when they have downtime, they do happy calls. And that helps us to just keep things flowing and make sure that our customers are satisfied with what they're doing. So they'll call up and say, hey, we were out yesterday. Here's a quick survey. I'd love to hear how your experience was. That just helps us to continue to improve. The final one is SDRs, sales development reps. Their entire job is outbound. So, in the CSRs, they do mostly inbound and some outbound. Our SDRs are full outbound, and that means 100 to 130 phone calls a day of pure out. And what they're doing is they're doing rehashes. Maybe they're calling out to people that engaged in our marketing before to try to set an appointment, tell them about promos. They're calling people that have done work with us in the past to let them know about promos and see if we can book something. They're calling people about annuals. Hey, it's time for your air conditioning service or your furnace service. And they're calling members to schedule their tune-ups. So SDRs is an important role. And at various times of the year, our SDR campaigns are the biggest schedule filler that we have. So in early February of this year, our schedule was filling every day almost exclusively on the back of our SDRs because there was little demand for our services on Google. So they are a great way to farm your existing customer list, to continue to generate work with people who you have already acquired that lead from. So that's SDRs. So that's the call center. Now, as the team grows, you start adding team leads, you start adding a call center manager, you add scorecarding and metrics and a few other things that we're going to talk about here. But Those are the 4 fundamental roles that you have in your call center as it continues to grow. Now, you can add these roles in at any time that you want. I know a number of businesses that have had all 4 below $4 million a year in revenue. I think it gets tough at 1, but this is to help you get a roadmap of who you think you need over the next few years as your business continues to grow. Here's the KPIs for the 4 roles of call center. So CSRs, we expect their inbound booking percentage to be above 85%. We expect 80 calls a day, whether in or out. We expect an outbound booking rate of 10%. We want average talk time to be 4 minutes or less, and we want to sell 3 memberships a week. And that's our CSRs, the mostly inbound team. For our inside sales, we expect $50,000 a week of sold jobs, and we expect 50 calls a day. For our outbounders, we expect a booking rate of 10% on 100 to 120 phone calls a day. Dispatch is purely measured off of drive time between jobs, revenue, and gross margin. And those are the KPIs of the 4 fundamental roles inside your call center. The second role that people bring into their call center is the dispatcher. And we get a lot of questions on when do I split my CSR and my dispatch? And it's a great question. The answer is pretty straightforward. It's usually between $2 to $3 million of revenue. We have roughly found that we have 1 CSR per $1.5 million of revenue. So at $2 to $3 million, you probably have 2 CSRs or a CSR and a half, with probably some overflow for nights and weekends. So it's at that point that you want to start thinking about dividing those roles off. Because an effective CSR is a great talker, they're friendly, they're organized, they can ask good questions, and they can be empathetic. But a dispatcher is like a data analyst, and those are just 2 different human beings. The dispatcher needs to organize the day, they need to be thinking and constantly recalculating of who's the right person to go on what job, whether that's route-based or dispatching for profits, like we talked about in the last video. So once you have a little bit of revenue and you're between $2 to $3 million, you can start thinking about splitting off those 2 roles. You can do it earlier if it makes sense. 5 technicians, 6 technicians would be another good measurement for when to split those roles off. So that is when you think about splitting CSR from dispatch.